As in the 14 lines of a sonnet, a few strokes of the pencil can hold immensity. Now that was a quote by Laura Knight, who is the artist that we will be studying today in art history. So Laura Knight was an English artist who worked in oils, watercolors, etching, engraving, and dry point. Knight was a painter in the figurative realist tradition who also embraced English Impressionism. In her long career, Knight was among the most successful and popular painters in Britain. Her success in the male-dominated British art establishment paved the way for greater status and recognition for women artists. So together today, we will dive into the life, the artwork, and the legacy of Miss Laura Knight. Before we get started though, here are 3 key terms that I want you to remember. They are going to pop up through our conversation today, and I just might quiz you on them in the end. So here they are. Realist tradition. Figurative. English Impressionism. Right. Remember those 3 terms because here we go diving into the life of Miss Laura Knight. Laura Johnson was born in Long Eaton, Derbyshire on August 4th, 1877. Her father abandoned the family not long after her birth, and Knight grew up amid financial problems. Her mother taught part-time at the Nottingham School of Art and managed to have Laura enrolled as an artisan student there, paying no fees at just the age of 13. At the age of 15, and still a student herself, Laura took over her mother's teaching duties when Charlotte was diagnosed with cancer and became seriously ill. Later, Laura won a scholarship and the gold medal in the National Student Competition held by then South Kensington Museum. She continued to give private lessons after she left the School of Art, as both she and her sister, Evangeline Agnes, to live and work there. In staves, Laura drew the people of the fishing village and the surrounding farms, showing the hardship and poverty of their lives. She made studies, paintings, and watercolors, often painting in muted, shadowy tones. Lack of money for expensive materials meant she produced few oil paintings at this time. Local children would sit for her for pennies, giving her the opportunity to develop her figure painting technique. In 1903, Harold and Laura married. So Laura went from Laura Johnson to what we know today, Laura Knight. They spent some years traveling, painting what they saw along the way. In late 1907, the Knights moved to Cornwall, staying first in Newlyn, before moving to the nearby village of Lamorna. There, alongside Lamorna Birch and Alfred Munings, they became central figures in the artist colony known as the Newlyn School. By March 1908, both had work exhibited at the Newlyn Art Gallery, and Harold Knight was an established professional portrait painter, while Laura Knight was still developing her art. Around Newlyn, the Knights found themselves among a group of sociable and energetic artists, which appears to have allowed the more vivid and dynamic aspects of Laura's personality to come forth. Laura Knight spent the summer of 1908 working on the beaches at Newlyn, making studies for her large paintings of children in bright sunlight. The beach was shown at the Royal Academy in 1909 and was considered a great success, showing Laura painting in a more impressionistic style than she had displayed previously. About this time, she also began painting compositions of women in the open air, in the plein air manner, often on the rocks or cliff tops around their town. Censorship during the First World War included restrictions on sketching and painting around the British coastline, which caused problems for Knight, particularly when painting spring. But special painting and sketching permits available after 1915 allowed her to continue her paintings of clifftop landscapes. Spring was shown at the Royal Academy in 1916, but later reworked. Several others were completed from studies in the Knight's first London studio after they moved to the capital in 1919. Also, Knight received a $300 commission to paint a canvas for the Canadian Government War Record Office on the theme of physical training in a camp. This would be some of the first war-related work which became prevalent later in her life. Between 1911 until 1929, Knight drew and painted backstage some of the most famous ballet dancers of the day, from Sergei Diaghilev's Ballet Russes. Her subjects included Lydia Lapkova, Anna Pavlova, and the dance teacher Enrico Cencetti. Knight also painted backstage and in the dressing rooms at several Birmingham theater productions. In 1924, she was commissioned to design the costumes for the ballet Les Roses. In 1926, Harold Knight spent several months at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, in America, painting portrait commissions of surgeons. Laura joined him there and was given permission to paint at the Baltimore Children's Hospital and in the black wards of the racially segregated Johns Hopkins Hospital. Whilst in Baltimore, Laura painted a nurse, Pearl Johnson, who took her to meetings and concerts of the early American Civil Rights Movement. Laura also hired a mother and child model to pose for the composition, originally known as the Madonna of the Cotton Fields. Laura took these paintings back to London with her, and they feature in the Poth newsreel produced to mark her election as an associate of the Royal Academy in 1927. Miss Elin, shown at the Royal Academy in 1928, depicts a woman with cropped hair wearing a jacket and holding a gun. The same year, Laura's portrait of a woman saxophone player was displayed at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Now, in the early 1920s, Laura visited the Bertram Mills Circus at Olympia in West London. Mills Circus was a highly polished show with internationally renowned performers. Laura painted some of these performers, such as the clown Whimsical Wilson, several times. Charivari or the Grand Parade, they were exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1929, and they depict practically the entire circus cast of performers and animals. Now, throughout 1929 and 1930, Laura went on a tour of British towns with the combined Mills and Great Carmo Circus. Painting within a working circus forced Laura to paint at great speed, as the performers rarely had much time to pose. Laura responded by painting directly onto the canvas without a preliminary drawing, no sketch. 2 of Knight's circus designs were among the winning entries in a 1933 competition run by Cadbury's. You may notice that, especially this time of year, Easter, for our Cadbury Eggs chocolate. Now, she won this competition for a series of chocolate box designs, and they were displayed at a gallery in London, and this gained Laura recognition all across England. In September 1939, Laura was asked to produce a recruitment poster for the Women's Land Army, WLA. Laura hired 2 punch horses and a plow from a farmer and painted them outdoors in a cherry orchard at the Averils Farm in Worcestershire. Her original design for the WLA poster was rejected for placing too much emphasis on the horses rather than the women working. A new design with a single woman was accepted. During the Second World War, Knight was an official war artist contracted by the War Artist Advisory Committee on several short-term commissions. In total, Laura Knight had 17 completed paintings, together with numerous studies, accepted by the WAAC, most of which were exhibited in the National Gallery or the Royal Academy during the war. This painting is titled Ruby Loftus Screwing a Breech Ring. And in the autumn of 1942, the WAAC commissioned Laura to paint a portrait to bolster female recruitment to the ordnance factories, as the Ministry of Supply were concerned at the level of disaffection and absenteeism among women working in the factories. The resulting painting is one of the largest oil paintings in the entire WAAC collection and the largest single figure portrait it acquired throughout the entire World War II. The painting was first shown on the 30th of April 1943 at the Royal Academy, and the next day it was reproduced in 8 British newspapers. The painting also was featured in a British Paramount News short film shown in cinemas, and it was reproduced in a poster version by the WAAC. The success of the painting led to further industrial commissions for Knight throughout the 1940s. Now, this commission is titled Takeoff, and it is a large and complex group portrait of 4 from the 7-man crew of a short Sterling bomber, deep in concentration, preparing for a flight, which Laura painted over several months at RAF Mildenhall. Laura lived in the WAAF officers' mess while on the base, and the RAF gave her the use of an obsolete Sterling to work in while preparing the painting. When Laura learned that the navigator in the picture, Raymond Frankish Ascreet, had been killed in action, she arranged that his family receive a photograph of this painting. Now, throughout the war, Laura continued taking private commissions, usually from individuals or for family portraits. The most notable wartime example of these is the composition Betty and William Jacklin, showing a mother and a child, along with their pet rabbit and the Malvern countryside in the background. Now, this painting was exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1942. In the aftermath of the war, Laura proposed to the War Artists Advisory Committee the Nuremberg War Crimes Trials as a subject. The committee agreed, and Laura went to Germany in January 1946 and spent 3 months observing the main trial from inside the courtroom. The result was the large oil painting, the Nuremberg Trial. This painting departs from the realism of her wartime paintings, in that whilst apparently realistically depicting the Nazi war criminals sitting in the dock, the rear and side walls of the courtroom are missing to reveal a ruined city partially in flames. Now, Knight explained this choice of composition in a letter to the War's Artist Advisory Committee. She says, "In that ruined city, death and destruction are ever present. They had to come into the picture. Without them, it would not be the Nuremberg as it now is during the trial, when the death of millions and utter devastation are the sole topics of conversation wherever one goes, whatever one is doing." The painting was coolly received at the subsequent Royal Academy Summer Exhibition, but was greatly praised by those who had witnessed the trials. After the war, Laura returned to her previous themes of the ballet, the circus, gypsies, and she continued to divide her time between London and Malvern. In 1948, Laura painted backstage at the Shakespeare Memorial Theatre, mostly observing the work of the wardrobe department, still working under some restrictions. The same year, she painted a large group portrait of Princess Elizabeth and several civic dignitaries opening the new Broadgate Centre in Coventry. A period of illness affected her work on this commission, and despite Laura's repainting large parts of the canvas, the finished painting was not well received. A major exhibition of over 80 works by Knight was held at the Ian Nicol Gallery in Glasgow in 1952. The following year, Laura returned to the theatre, painting and producing crayon studies backstage at the Old Vic in London during the Birmingham Theatre production of Henry V Part 1 and 2. Throughout this period, Laura continued to exhibit at the Royal Academy each year, most notably with a portrait of Jean Rhodes, a professional strong woman known as the Mighty Mannequin, which when shown in 1955 led to further portrait commissions for Laura. Now, in 1961, Laura lost her husband, Harold. He died, and the couple, they had been together for 58 years. Now, Laura's second autobiography, The Magic of a Line, was published in 1965 to coincide with a major retrospective of her work at the Royal Academy. The exhibition, the first such for a woman at the Academy, contained over 250 works and was followed in 1968 and 1969 by further retrospective exhibitions at the same gallery. Now, Laura Knight passed away on July 7th, 1970. She was 92 years old, and this was just 3 days before a large exhibition of her work was opening at Nottingham Castle Art Gallery and Museum. Now, what is the legacy of Miss Laura Knight, Dame Laura Knight? What did she leave behind? Now, in her long career, Laura Knight was among the most successful and popular painters in Britain. Her success in the male-dominated British art establishment paved the way for greater status and recognition for women artists. In 1929, she was created a dame, and in 1936 became the first woman elected to full membership at the Royal Academy. Her large retrospective exhibition at the Royal Academy in 1965 was the first for a woman. Laura was known for painting amidst the world of the theater and ballet in London and for being a war artist during the Second World War. She was also greatly interested in and inspired by marginalized communities and individuals, including gypsies and circus performers. So pretty much she's an awesome lady. And she paved the path for other women in Britain. She painted what she wanted. She painted people that we often kind of forget about, put them into the public's eye, and she did it in her own style, her own way. So, thank you, Miss Laura Knight, for making our world a more beautiful place. Now, we have swam through the life of Laura Knight, dived right through it. Can you out there remember those 3 terms from the very beginning? Can you remember them? Well, start thinking of them, because I am about to flip this over. We're going to grab our art journal. We are going to write those 3 terms down. We're going to do a little sketch in honor of Dame Laura Knight. So we're going to put what we learned onto paper. As you saw, she was a figurative painter. She painted figures, she painted people. And one of her favorite things to paint was ballet dancers and circus performers. So today we are going to sketch a ballerina. Don't worry, try it out. Don't be hard on yourself. Have fun with this process. I'm going to flip my camera over. I'm going to pull up a painting of a ballerina, and we're going to take a stab at it. We're going to try it out. So let me get this camera set up, and we'll put what we just learned right onto paper. All right, so you have your art journal or just a blank piece of paper. I know you've got some scratch paper somewhere in your room. Flip an old piece of paper over, grab it, and try this sketch out with me. This is just about fun, about trying something new. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we studied Miss Laura Knight today, right? So I'm flipping to a blank page here. And I'm going to write her name right on the top of our page. Laura Knight, Dame Laura Knight. She was actually the first woman knighted in England. And then what were those 3 terms? They were realist, tradition, they were figurative, and English impressionism. So as you saw, as we kind of swam through her life and her artwork, she was a realist painter. She painted figures, painted people, made them look lifelike. But she was influenced by Impressionism, not necessarily trying to make them perfectly realistic, but giving you the impression of what she saw when she was painting that person. Well, today, just like her, we are going to paint or draw, sketch a figure, and we're looking at this ballerina today. She loved the ballet. She loved being backstage, meeting these dancers, seeing them work, and she loved painting them. So that is how we're going to honor our artist today. So we're going to take just a couple minutes. We're doing a rough sketch of this ballerina. As I say all the time, it's about having fun, about trying something new. Don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't turn out exactly how you want. Just try it out. You never know what you can and can't do until you try. So here we go. We're going to sketch this ballerina. I am starting with her head, just a nice little circle, and coming down her neck, just 2 lines coming out of that head. Now her arms are sticking kind of, one is going straight out to the side and the other is kind of bent, holding on to the wall there. So I'm just kind of roughly, I'm just drawing lines. You know, I break down these figures into lines and shapes. That's how these artists do it. Just nice rough sketching. I'm kind of bringing this down to a V, and then I'm giving her a big old poofy ballerina skirt, huh? Now I'm having her legs come out the bottom here. Of course, giving them that nice pointed toe over here, right? That's kind of the point of the ballerina. And now just kind of adding any little details that you want. So I kind of erased at the end there. I'm giving her a little shorter arm. I gave her some long dancing arms there, and I'm just kind of sketching. Hands are always the trickiest thing. Hands and arms are hard for me to draw. So I usually just give the impression that they're there. You can give her some hair up here if you want. I'm gonna give her a little bun. I always think of these little tight buns on top of ballerinas' heads, and maybe a little face up there. And there we have it. There's a little sketch of a ballerina. It's not perfect. Look at my blocky arms. Yeah, it's not perfect. It never will be. But we're having fun, and it's just a way to kind of get what we learned onto paper so it sticks in our brain, so we remember all about this wonderful lady. Well, all my artists out there, I really hope that you enjoyed our conversation today about Miss Laura Knight. I hope you learned something new, saw something new, and I hope that it inspires you in your own personal artistic pursuits. May you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time. Take care out there, and happy creating, everybody. Bye.